Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the underworld. The Star Wars underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun, and it's all-round good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
Whoa! I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
What's up, Star Wars fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Star Wars Underworld podcast. So we are your source for the latest breaking Star Wars news and discussion each and every week. And this week on the show, we're going to be breaking down all the new teaser trailers and reveals for the book of Boba Fett. Kathleen Kennedy has had a lot to say about a great many things, and we're going to be examining her latest comments, and we have some exciting casting rumors about the Ahsoka series. All that and much more on this episode. My name is Chris, and joining me, it's my good friend, Mr. Dominic Jones.
Hello, Chris. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm excited to be doing the show, Chris, but I'm kind of sad that we're back to being in separate places after we recorded that mini episode last week.
Or are we in separate?
Yeah,
no, yeah, we are.
Are we? Are we? I don't know.
My hand's not showing up over there. No.
Yeah, after we recorded that mini episode last week, which was so much fun, and there's more content that we recorded from that coming that's specifically related to our Patreon, although everybody will be able to see it. So look for that. Probably not this week or next week, but in the not too distant future. So great stuff, and I had a great time on my trip down there in Southern California, and I was quite upset to get home and find out that it snowed while I was away. It was like coming back home and there was literal snow on the ground. And I'm like, I was wearing shorts 24 hours ago. This is not right, not fair. But the final thing I did on my trip, and we're going to talk about some of the things that I did, like Comic-Con and that sort of thing. But my final thing was I went to Disneyland, and when I say Disneyland, I mean Galaxy's Edge. And one of the great things about Galaxy's Edge is interacting with the characters, and that's been scaled back a little bit because of COVID. They don't have Rey or Kylo Ren or any of the characters like walking around that you can actually talk to like up face to face, but they still have lots of stormtroopers up on these like balconies that are way up high, and they look down at you and they'll like shout stuff down at you. And there were these two stormtroopers. They were standing up, and it was near the First Order shuttle, and they're standing up there, and they're just, posing for people. And like all Star Wars fans, when I see a stormtrooper, I take out my camera and start taking pictures of them. And so I'm taking pictures, and they have these like pre-recorded lines that they say. And one of them goes, I've spotted the source of the interference. And he points at me. And I'm like, ooh, I'm in trouble now. The stormtroopers are looking at me, and they start saying things like, show me your identification, blah, 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 blah. And in that moment, I was transported back to all the other times I've tried to interact with Star Wars characters at Galaxy's Edge. The times that I kept saying the wrong thing to Rey, or the time that Chewbacca chastised me for wearing a Boba Fett t-shirt. And all the times it's gone slightly wrong and hasn't been what I wanted it to be. And I'm like, not this time. I'm going to get it right this time. So I looked up at those stormtroopers, and I flipped over my forearm, and I showed them my Rebel Alliance tattoo.
Ooh.
And one of the stormtroopers sees it, and he grabs the handrail, because the one thing that is not right about Galaxy's Edge is that they actually have handrails in this version of Star Wars. He grabs the handrails, and he goes, "A resistance agent! Step forward, citizen!" So I walk forward. He's pointing at me, he's going, "You picked the wrong side. You picked the wrong side." And I'm like, oh, well, I'm like going back, and I'm like, I don't think so. He's like, "We're going to need a list of all of your friends." I'm like, I'm not giving you that. He's like, "Hand it over, you rebel scum." I'm like, oh, I don't think so, man. I don't think so. And finally, we're going back and forth. And finally, I'm like, I got to walk away. There's no way this ends unless I walk away. This stormtrooper is a little too good at yes-anding me. So I'm like, I just sort of give him one of these, pointing at the eyes like I'm watching him. and I start walking away, but all the while keeping eye contact with the stormtrooper, and he's keeping eye contact with me. Like neither one of us is going to break off this eye contact. So I'm walking away. Finally, I just duck literally out of Galaxy's Edge and walk away, literally cackling to myself. The people who were coming into Galaxy's Edge must have thought I was insane. But it was a lot of fun. It was a really sort of cool moment, and the kind of thing that all Star Wars fans dream of. Actually getting to play out a little scene in Star Wars. So that was really cool, and that was just sort of like a little moment in a terrific trip to Galaxy's Edge. And I'm gonna sprinkle in some more Galaxy's Edge stories throughout the show, but we've got lots of great stuff to get to that doesn't involve me arguing with stormtroopers. It's gonna be a great show.
That's right. You may have noticed that Ben is not with us. He had something very unfortunate come up this week, but he will be back, and that's what we are grateful for.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we're sending Ben our best, and he's talked about it on social media, so you can go and see what happened. But real scary situation. But thankfully everybody's all right, and we'll be real excited to see him again next week.
Yes, thanks, Rick, for the shout out. We appreciate that. So we've got some plugs to get to before we get into the news. Real quick, we want to thank everybody for helping us get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, which was like 10 years in the making. we're finally there. So thank you so much to everyone that's subscribed. And if you haven't yet, make sure you head over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. This is going to help us make even better content for you guys. So we really appreciate the help. Also want to give a shout out to all the other shows in our network that are on YouTube. We've got Chatter Squadron, we've got The Rollout, we've got Star Wars Culture. Head over to the Culture Slate YouTube channel where you can get like little bits and pieces of all of the shows on the network and find all the links to all of their channels from over there. That's right, Jesse. 10,000 is our next goal. That's our stretch goal.
Yeah.
And you get like a little Gamorrean guard.
Yeah, I was gonna say, unlike Hasbro, we'll make sure our stretch goals are like things you actually want.
That's right. And speaking of things you actually want, you can find a lot of that over at patreon.com/the SWU. And we're very, very close to having a lot of information about that as well. So keep tuned for us to kind of break all the new stuff down that we have over there. But you can get a preview right now by heading over to patreon.com/the SWU. And as always, if you subscribe for as little as $1 a month, you get those Patreon bonus pre-shows that we do every week. And we got a new one up this week to check out. If you always wanted to email the show, but you didn't know how, now you do. swunderworld@gmail.com is that 10-year-old Gmail address that we still have that you can email. And if you are still listening to this show and places where you can listen to podcasts, please leave a review over there. And usually this is Ben's segment, but since he's not here, Dominic, it's you have the floor to talk about all of the awesome stuff you've been doing in the podcast community.
Yeah, I feel like I should just start plugging an episode of the Intergalactic Peace Coalition, just in honor of Ben being here. Like I don't know what they would have talked about this week, but I could plug that. No, I just recorded an episode of Steel Wars with our buddy Steele Saunders. We talked about a lot of the news this week, talked about a lot of Book of Boba Fett stuff, some Hasbro stuff, and some Galactic Star Cruiser stuff. It's a lot of fun, and check it out. You can find Steel Wars on YouTube and all the various podcasting platforms. And yeah, it's a very fun episode. Lots of good Star Wars talk. Check it out.
Awesome.
All right, so we got a lot of stuff to get to. We got Book of Boba Fett trailers. We got Kathleen Kennedy quotes, all sorts of good stuff. But let's take a quick minute before we do that, because Chris, you and I did something last week that we haven't done together in a very, very long time. And that is, we actually went to a convention. We went to San Diego Comic-Con special edition, and we walked the floor, and we went to some panels, although in hindsight, maybe we wish we hadn't gone to some of those panels. We bought collectibles. We saw some friends. Comic-Con 2021 special edition. What did you think? How was your experience?
Wow, it was very fascinating, and like not exactly like I didn't know what to expect going into this. Like I went to New York Comic Con this year as well, but like it like wasn't I was only there for like an hour, so I didn't really get to experience much of the convention. So this was kind of my first full convention that I've went to multiple days since the pandemic. And it was really fascinating because of all the conventions to have kind of like a small kind of light version, this would be kind of the most extreme because San Diego is like the craziest convention. It's the convention that most people go to. There's lines for days. Like there's a whole song about it. Like it's crazy. So it was very, very, very different. It was extremely different experience having it scaled down to kind of like more of your typical local convention size. There weren't the big Hall H panels. There weren't the big things that people were waiting in line for, getting wristbands for. It was just all kind of the smaller panels that you would have that are kind of more of kind of like the side thing on the side, usually at an SDCC that you only kind of make it to if there's nothing big that you're doing or can't get into. But so you still had that type of stuff. The show floor was pretty big still, though. I would say it definitely was smaller than the regular, but there was still a good amount of vendors there. You didn't have the big ones, like there was no Hasbro, there was no Lucasfilm, no Sideshow, the things that we usually gravitate towards as Star Wars fans. They didn't have, but like Kotobukiya was there, and there were some smaller things there, and a lot of people still selling Star Wars action figures. Like you might notice if you can back in my background, I've got a couple new additions back here. I got Aura Singh, and I got Bo-Katan. So I was able to finally find those at the convention. So that part was still there with selling all the various collectibles and things. And other than like a very long line the first day to get in because they were like checking to see if people were vaccinated, I didn't really wait in line for anything else at the convention. So it was pretty simple and easy, but again, way less attractions as well. So overall, it was like a good experience. I would say the one negative, if I had to say there was a negative, is overpriced. Like we were able to get in, fortunately, as press. We didn't have to deal with that. But I kind of feel bad for everybody that did have to purchase a ticket because I don't feel like what was offered there was worth the price, which was less than a normal SDCC, but still like a good amount of money compared to what you got. And if you were to compare it to conventions that would have been that size prior to the pandemic, there's no way it would have been $150 like this was.
Yeah. It was like a really, really, really good local con. It's sort of how I would describe it. There was maybe, it was maybe a little bit light on celebrities, but that's never really been San Diego Comic-Con's thing is the autograph signings. They'll bring in the celebrities to promote movies and that sort of thing. But when they don't have that, there's not a big signing presence at Comic-Con. You don't go looking for, Mark Hamill's autograph the way you do at Star Wars Celebration or other local cons. But I think that's the way to describe it. Like it was a fun time, but it wasn't San Diego Comic-Con as we know and love it. It was just a scaled down version. And I wonder with the, those ticket prices, if they were maybe hoping that they could put on something that was a little bit closer to SDCC Classic than they managed to pull off. And, there were times where it did really feel like we were there. It was, back at Comic-Con. Some of the displays were really cool and like really, I think it was some of the toy companies really went all out on their displays like they always do, which is, I think, one thing that separates it from, say, Fan Expo Canada, which I did about a month ago. And so, it was nice to be there. It was nice to see everything. It was nice to pick up some new collectibles. But, it wasn't, as I said, Comic-Con proper, which is not what we were expecting. The one time it felt like Comic-Con proper was, as you were saying, when you were in line to show your vaccine card, because that I remember on Friday seeing those lines and being like, oh yeah, this looks like Comic-Con, and that was the only time on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday that we saw those lines. So I have no regrets about going. I had a terrific time, I had a tremendous time, but it just made me really hungry for a big con like a San Diego Comic-Con proper or a Star Wars Celebration, which we are less than 6 months away from Star Wars Celebration. As I was getting ready to go home, I put up on my Instagram one final post that had the little countdown in it. You can put the countdown in your story, counting down to the opening day of Star Wars Celebration, and I was scandalized to see 5 months as the time frame. 5 months and 20 some odd days, but it was like, oh my god, it is so close, but it still feels so far away. So hopefully that manages to still happen, and we can get back into the way things have always been. But also shout out to our friends Corey and Audrey. We spent a lot of time with on Saturday at Comic-Con. It was just a terrific time. Being with friends, because that's ultimately what cons are all about.
And that was definitely the highlight for me as well. Like, outside of just the con experience, getting to finally like hang out with a bunch of like friends in a group for the first time. That was really the first time I've done it in like 2 years.
Yeah.
But you have to go back to the Rise of Skywalker premiere, which was almost exactly two years ago in a few weeks.
Wild.
That was the last time that I've been around like several people at the same time who were all part of like the community. And so that was amazing, and that of course got me so hyped for future things like that, like Celebration. As well, like next year. I don't want to jinx it, but like next year, let's go. Everything's gonna be normal again. Please. Yeah.
All right, let's get into some news now. Something that maybe could have or should have been at San Diego Comic-Con Special Edition, and that is of course the Book of Boba Fett. We've got 2 new teasers, 2 new TV spots, I guess you might call these, for the series, and we're gonna start with the one called Rain.
I am Boba Fett.
The Book of Boba Fett, streaming December 29th, only on Disney+.
So that one actually did drop during the convention. Like it dropped on Saturday. So I didn't get to like fully appreciate it until afterwards, because had other stuff on our minds. But Chris, what did you think of that teaser?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have any like big reveals in it, like no like Finn holding a lightsaber, like nothing of that level. So I didn't have an extremely strong reaction to seeing it. I was just like, oh yeah, that's a thing, it's happening, I'm hyped for this. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just nothing specific. I had no specific like OMG kind of reactions to this particular one.
Yeah, the second one, which we'll get to in a minute, is kind of the one that has the moments where you kind of go, ooh, something interesting is going on here. What sort of stood out to me in this one is something that stood out in the trailer proper, which is just this expanded look at Tatooine that we're getting. It we've seen Tatooine in a lot of things. Obviously, it's a cliche at this point to talk about how we always go back to the planet if there's a bright center of the universe, it's the planet that's farthest from, which I know people complain about that, but to me that's like a selling point. That's something I'm excited about. But just seeing these like expansive cities on Tatooine, it's not something we ever really seen before. We get a little bit of a glimpse of that with Mos Espa in Phantom Menace. When you see all those huts where everybody is living. But by and large, Tatooine, we tend to think of as kind of smaller, a little, it's Uncle Owen's farm, it's Obi-Wan's hovel, Mos Eisley, it's a spaceport. And yeah, they've expanded in the special editions, but it still feels pretty small. What we're looking at in some of these shots looks like a city. And so I'm wondering, are they going to say, oh yeah, that's Mos Eisley or that's Mos Espa, just as you've never seen it before? Or is it going to be like in that episode of Mando with Cobb Vanth, where they introduced us to a new Moss, with Mos Pelgo, and maybe we're going to go to Moss, New York or something, where it's just this like big expansive city that we've never seen before. So I'm really excited about that, to see that other look at Tatooine.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating because it's like Tatooine's an entire planet, and like one of the things that one of the tropes in Star Wars that we kind of make fun of from time to time is how, planets kind of are all the same from what we see. They all have the same kind of environment. Like Hoth's like an ice planet, Tatooine's a desert planet, Naboo there's a bunch of lakes and rivers and trees, and that's pretty much all that is. And then you only see like a few major cities on these planets, and it's just kind of, you're left to assume that that's it. Like if you kind of think about like Alderaan, you just picture where Bail Organa lives, and there's really not much to picture. When you think of Tatooine, you think of those few Moss cities, and that's it. But this is an entire planet here. Like there could be so much more. There could be more environments. There could be more civilizations, cities, cultures, things that one, we don't know about, and two, maybe even the people there don't know about it. I mean, they're as late as a century ago, even here on Earth, we were discovering cities and civilizations that we didn't know existed as the people who know things. So for their perspective, they didn't know we existed. We didn't exist. And so you'd think it would be the same in a galaxy far, far away. So I'm excited if some of these places are new. I'm excited to kind of like world build and expand the universe a little bit more. And kind of say like, okay, what you saw, in the films, that's not all there is to these planets. We're not just going to keep going back to the same places over and over again. Like, I think that's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, one of my favorite things that they did in the last season of Clone Wars was when we went back to Kessel and we got this glimpse of Kessel as this really beautiful place.
Yeah.
And you contrast that with what you normally think of as Kessel, as the mines and this really awful place. And, by and large, Kessel's an awful place. Like, just because there's one nice spot on it doesn't mean that it's a great place to hang out.
Yeah.
So it might be interesting, especially if we're going to delve into the crime underworld of Tatooine, to kind of show us where the rich people on Tatooine live, where the quote unquote nice part of town is. And we can go there, and it'll be, maybe there is like a city where all the mobsters hang out. And on the surface, it looks really beautiful, but much like Kessel, it's built on the backs of slaves. It's a really awful, brutal place. So that could be really interesting to play with our expectations. And the Mandoverse has already done that a little bit with Tatooine, with it, how it's changed our perspectives on the Tusken Raiders.
Yeah, that's true.
And I fully expect this show to continue to do that, and we may get into some of that with the next TV spot. But one other thing I wanted to mention really quickly in this one, if you go to like literally the halfway point in it, 15 seconds out of 30, there's the shot of Boba and Fennec finding the Slave One, or Boba Fett's starship, whatever you want to call it. And you can see Boba is wearing his robes. He's not wearing his armor. This is the first time in any of these promotional stuff that we've seen him back in the robes. And kind of suggests that this is before Mando Season 2. So, everybody's expecting flashbacks in the show. I think that this is our first confirmation that we'll get some of that. And again, we'll get to the next trailer in a second, where there seems to be more confirmation of that. So just interesting stuff in that first one. More quick shots of action and that sort of thing. But giving us little pieces here and there to pick up on. All right, this next TV spot, this one's called Message.
I am Boba Fett, left for dead on the sands of Tatooine. Jabba ruled with fear. I intend to rule with respect.
The Book of Boba Fett, streaming December 29th on Disney+.
Now that one's got some some interesting moments to it. I noticed this in season 2 of Mandalorian, but I don't think we ever commented on it. I love the way Tamura Morrison says Tatooine. He doesn't say Tatooine. He says Tatooine. And it's just, I don't know, it's something cool. I love the way it works with his accent. And the other thing is, in both of the trailers, we hear him say, "I am Boba Fett." And he says it in a way that is reminiscent of the holiday special cartoon. I don't know if they messed with the audio mix of that a little bit, make it sound a little bit more like the guy in the cartoon, but he does. I have to think that's intentional, because that was my thought. Was every time he said, "I am Boba Fett," I thought about the old holiday special cartoon. What'd you think of this one? What'd you think of Message?
Yeah, no, this one was really cool. And yeah, obviously, like, the big thing in here is that shot of him in like a back to tank or something, like healing. Like that's really cool. And then, between these two, that's the big thing, is this concept of flashbacks. It's like we got a very tiny amount of them in The Mandalorian, with that scene of Din getting rescued by the Mandalorians. So there's that already that's a precedent that's established, that where we have these visual flashbacks, that it's a part of the storytelling now. And now it looks like they're going a little bit more into that, which I really like, because I just, there's a lot of stuff that I want to see in the Star Wars universe that isn't quite in line with the timeline of whatever show it is, whether if it happens like, a few months before the show or like 20 years before the show. And so I'm glad that there are these moments. We got a few in the sequels as well, where we're starting to kind of piece together visually what certain events look like and what certain characters look like at certain points. And I think that's really cool. So I've always been a fan of that type of storytelling, and I'm glad that Star Wars is doing it. And I'm just really excited for what possibilities await, because Boba Fett has this really long and complicated history and backstory, and like we got a little bit more in animated form in the Clone Wars, but there's just, as far as live action goes, there's nothing there really. I mean, he just comes in and out of the films, and is just there for grand total of, who knows, like 10 minutes in all of them or something,
if that.
And so if that, if you just include all the time he's in the background or something, like so like having the opportunity for this show to kind of not just be the current story of where Boba Fett is right now, but also kind of show us perhaps more of his backstory and history. That's really exciting. Like, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I fully expect that there will be more flashbacks in this than anything we've seen to date.
Yeah.
I hope they don't overdo it. I hope they keep the focus on the here and now. But
they're just redoing Star Wars 1313.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Is like, I know everybody's excited for flashbacks, but I want to make sure that we keep our focus on what the story is now, and that it doesn't become sort of a wish list of, I wish we had gotten 1313, so maybe they can do 1313 in this. Maybe we'll get a scene or two that flashback to those moments. Maybe we'll get a moment here or there. Maybe we'll get quick looks at how he survived the Sarlacc. Maybe we'll get quick looks of him working for Jabba. But we do have to remember that the ultimate goal of this story is Boba Fett uniting, taking over, being pushed out by, that's a possibility, I suppose, the criminal underworld, and specifically the criminal underworld on Tatooine. So that's where the focus is. Hopefully we'll get those glimpses of those other things. But we'll keep the focus on the here and now, where it belongs, as a wise Jedi once said. But I will say, this shot of him in the back to tank, I'm going to throw something out here. I don't think this is a flashback.
Ooh,
I think this might be. I think we might see that Boba is kind of like still checking into the back to tank here and there, because look at the makeup on Tim Morrison in these trailers, and you compare it to the makeup in season 2. Boba's looking a lot better. He's looking a lot less beat up. He's looking a lot healthier than he did in the previous episodes. So I wonder if he's still going through the process of healing. The Sarlacc is made to sound really horrific and really terrible. So you would think that once you get out of there, it's not like you get out of there and you're just fine. There's a whole process of getting better and healing from that. And so it wouldn't surprise me if we see Boba going in and out of a back to tank here and there in the series, or if we see it once to sort of suggest that this is something that he's constantly doing, and that's why they've changed his look somewhat from Mando season 2.
Yeah. So your idea is this is just the Tatooine spa.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's what I'm thinking. But I do think we will see him get out of the Sarlacc, because there's that shot that's been in the trailers, it's been in other things, of the Tusken Raiders just out there on the sands of Tatooine, as Thames calls it.
I don't know why that's not the name of this show, The Sands of Tatooine. Like, that's a great name.
That's a good name. That could be this show. That could be Kenobi. It could be so many shows. It could be so many shows. And we're stuck with Kenobi, Ahsoka, Andor. Need more better names.
The Acolyte is the only decent name we have.
But we see the Tusken Raiders out there, and some people have speculated that like Boba's gonna break out of the Sarlacc and then have to fight off all these Tuskens. I'm like, no. That's not the image that the Mandalorian has been painting of the Tusken Raiders. That's what might have happened had we gotten a Boba Fett movie 5 years ago. I think what is more likely is Boba will like just barely crawl out of the Sarlacc pit. Again, you're supposed to be in there digesting for 1,000 years, gaining a new understanding of pain and suffering, as 3PO put it. I think Boba will just barely crawl out of there, and he'll be found by a whole bunch of Tusken Raiders, and they will save him. They will rescue him. They will get him back to health. Because if anybody is going to know how to deal with Sarlacc wounds, and with wounds that are specific to the sands of Tatooine, it's going to be the Tusken Raiders. It's their land. They live out in the harshest parts of it. And we see in the Marshall episode of the Mandalorian, like they've come up with their own ways to deal with things like crate dragons. And the reason they had to go to Mos Pelgo for help was because that was an especially big crate dragon, but they had their own ways of dealing with it already. It was their plan in the first place, which just suggests they know how to deal with them. So I think it's very likely that we will see the Tusken Raiders as Boba Fett's saviors, not his adversaries in the show.
Yeah, I agree with that, because again, there's that whole shift in how we view the Tuskens, and I think it would be very jarring to go from seeing them as characters that are certainly not villains or monsters at all in the Mandalorian, to have them be the adversaries and an obstacle for Boba Fett. Like, that doesn't make sense narratively, especially considering the fact that it's the same people making this show that made the Mandalorian. It doesn't make sense. So yeah, I think that's a really good theory, and I would be surprised if that wasn't the way things are leading in.
That if it goes the other way, yeah. The other thing, just, this is nothing to do with the show itself, but I hope they keep the Boba Fett themed Lucasfilm logo. I really
that's
like
cool.
that. They got to keep that around. We got a lot more Book of Boba Fett stuff to get to, but any sort of final thoughts on the teasers before we move on to what's being said about the show?
We've got that kind of Ithorian crime lord, looks kind of interesting. I don't know if we've seen any other angles of that shot before or not, but I was at least reminded of it seeing this trailer.
Yeah, it looks cool. And there's a shot of that looks like Boba and Fennec might be bringing somebody that they've captured to him. Like, it's interesting stuff going on there. I wonder if that's
now
the first episode.
Is it somebody, or is it a bunch of rare vegetables? Because the Thorians, they garden. That's what they do.
Is that so?
Yes. According to West End Games, or whoever's the authority on this lore.
Yeah. Well, what I'm interested to see, right, is the first couple of episodes, the first episode of every season of Mandalorian has had some big reveal at the end of the episode. There's been some moment that gets you to go, I got to tune in to next week's episode.
Right.
And I'm kind of wondering if Book of Boba will have that moment, right? We had Baby Yoda for season 1. We had Boba Fett himself for season 2. I kind of wonder if there's going to be something like that for Book of Boba, and it could be as simple as, Din Djarin showing up and just sort of everybody going like, "Ooh, Mando connections," or maybe there's some sort of twist. Obviously one of the almost sort of cliche talking points about the Book of Boba Fett trailer and teasers has been, well, I bet all of this is just from the first episode, or this is from the first 2 episodes. So maybe there's something that's going to, twist everything on its head afterwards. But I don't know. I can't really think of what that would be for the show, which is exciting because I never would have thought of Baby Yoda for Mandalorian. Guessing Boba Fett for season 2 is maybe a little bit of an easier one to go with, but yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
We don't know what this show's about.
Yeah.
The premise of the show is it's about Boba Fett kind of like taking over the underworld, the Tatooine and such. Like, that's the kind of the premise, and that's very kind of driven home by the dialogue that we've gotten in the trailers about how he's going to rule with respect and not fear. Yeah, that's not really what the show's about. Like, that's kind of a premise, and that sets the stage, but that's not the plot. Like, you can't have the plot of him just going around and taking control of things. Like, that's just what everything's set in. That's the setting for what will become the plot. We don't know what it is yet. We don't know what adversaries are going to come out of the woodworks with him trying to get this power.
He needs this series needs a strong antagonist. I'm not going to say villain or hero or anything like that, because I think we're dealing with a lot of gray areas. So, but it needs a strong antagonist. Whether that's somebody we've seen before or not, the sort of the dream scenario would have it be someone like Kira from Solo, get Amelia Clark back up in here.
That would be something else.
I think that's unlikely. But maybe it's, I don't know, Bosk or Dengar or Cad Bane or something like that.
It'd be another bounty hunter would be interesting.
Yeah, or the joke sort of version could be Stinky the Hutt.
Yes,
somebody to be the adversary. But I suspect that might be the moment, like, is the reveal of who the bad guy, quote unquote, for the series is going to be. That will kind of drive things going forward. But
who would fit the bill of ruling by fear the most? Because there's that distinction that's made in that dialogue and it's supposed to be separating Jabba from Boba, but perhaps also by that it naturally tells you what the antagonist is going to be like. It's going to be someone that someone's afraid of. So I don't know who would strike that much fear in people outside of the Empire, really. And at least in that era, the fear comes from the Empire. So if it's someone else in the underworld, who might that be? That's really fascinating.
Yeah, because the whole thing is that there's a big power vacuum. That Jabba has left a power vacuum, because you would say, people would be afraid of Jabba, but Jabba's not around anymore. So who is there who that will actually be able to strike that amount of fear? I don't know. It may be that we deal with in the first couple of episodes a lot of people who think that they can beat Jabba, and Boba will sort of step in there and smack him down, and we'll go sort of deal with and eventually a true challenger will emerge. And then maybe that's when you bring in Din Djarin, and that kind of distracts Boba, and people start to move away from Boba, because they're like, hey, you're all distracted with this Mandalorian guy. You're doing Mandalorian things. We can't have you be in charge and also doing stuff with him. So maybe we're going to sign on with the Crimson Dawn people, or the Black Sun people, or something like that. Maybe they'll bring back Princess Caesar.
I would be really excited for that. Oh gosh, to see that in live action. I was so excited when the Fallen made it into the Clone Wars, although it was a very unfortunate time for those characters in that show. It would be a lot interesting to see them kind of more in their prime, I guess. It's fascinating because all of that lore is very much non-canon now, like the Shadows of the Empire. And obviously, like, there's aspects of the way that story was told, that was very of its time as well.
But he shouldn't be having. He shouldn't. If we bring in Shizor, or however his name is pronounced, shouldn't be having any pheromones and things like that. That needs needs to stay in the dustbin of history.
And that was like a junior novelization type book too. I think that was a YA. I think Shadows of the Empire was YA.
No, Shadows was a proper.
You think so? Okay.
Yeah.
It's just the size of the book made me think that. But I mean, it was definitely. I mean, the thing was definitely marketed at kids because it's like there was like the toys.
Well,
and the video game.
It was marketed at Star Wars fans. Like the whole idea was that it was a movie release without a movie. It was a dress rehearsal for the Phantom Menace, essentially.
Yeah, right.
So it was marketed at kids in the same way that all Star Wars is marketed at kids. But really, they knew.
But they
that
didn't think that
buying it were going to be the adults.
You didn't think that the kids would want to read the book that all the toys are about? I mean, here was I as an 8-year-old reading the Phantom Menace book. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, they should have thought better.
Obviously, yeah. But anyway, the point is that for minus all that weirdness, it would be really cool to see Black Sun and Shizor and maybe some of the other characters from that era in the expanded universe ending up
Dash Rendar.
Yeah, there's some interesting characters for sure. So that would be cool, and you can just kind of like replace some things around because it's like that book was all about the struggle for power between Shizor and Vader as like the right-hand man to the Empire, who's the number 2 most feared person in the galaxy after the Emperor. And so you can kind of like take a lot of those personality traits and then shift them to being a struggle with Boba Fett instead. Like that could work. So I'm down for that. I would be really stoked for that.
Yeah, it would be cool. Could be cool. So the big thing. Oh, here's the answer to what we were sort of wondering about. Shadows of the Empire had an adult novel, junior grade novel, and comic book adaptation from Matthew Hardy.
I bet that the junior grade novel was the one that I read. But then that still had that stuff in it. So
yeah.
Doesn't fix that.
It was the 90s. It was a weird time.
But like it fit. It was the same size as like the junior novels that I read for the film adaptations.
That makes sense. Again, it's supposed to be a film. It was all the stuff to go with a film release without the film.
But then also at the same time, that wasn't too different in size from the Thrawn trilogy, which was not a junior novelization.
No, the Thrawn trilogy is like
they're a little thicker.
Yeah. At least the paperback versions are like.
I'm just picturing them all on my shelf, and they're all the same size for some reason. Now I have to go dig them out.
Your memory's playing tricks on you there. I think
maybe Thrawn was a little bit thicker. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep going with some Book of Boba Fett stuff. So we now know how many weeks of Book of Boba we will get. So the season length has been confirmed by StarWars.com, and it will be 7 episodes. So not the 9 that was rumored, but also not the 6 that I had assumed. So
I thought there was going to be 4. So this is way more than I was expecting initially. But because the whole thing, like initially, my whole theory was that the Book of Boba Fett was going to be like kind of like a prologue to the next season of The Mandalorian, because it's just the way that it just sounded. It just had that feel to it, and it just they weren't setting up this huge story with Boba Fett, so I didn't get this idea that there was much to tell. I thought, okay, we'll have a few episodes about Boba Fett, and then The Mandalorian's going to come in right after that, and maybe that was their plan, but then that got delayed and COVID and all this stuff. So it's nice to know that it's kind of almost a full season.
Yeah, because like it felt like when they announced it at the end of last year, it was supposed to be Book of Boba Fett would come out, then there'd be a short break, and then we get to season 3. So it would be like a prologue. And I wonder if those plans were adapted or if this was just always the case. I think Mandalorian season 3 was originally supposed to come out a lot sooner than it will be. I think it will sort of come out a year from now that we'll get episode 1 of season 3, around Christmas time, maybe the beginning of December, maybe the end of it, somewhere in that space. And so I think so. Obviously, things have been shifted around because COVID and scheduling and yada yada yada. But yeah, I had thought that Book of Boba would be shorter, that it would be, 4 episodes, 6 episodes. Sort of seemed like, it was going to be a limited series, and then there started to be those rumblings that it would be 8 or 9, and now none of it was right because it was 7, and I don't think anybody would have guessed 7 because that's just a weird number.
That is, yeah.
But yeah, so 7 episodes starting December 29th. Pretty cool, pretty exciting. We also got some posters. We'll throw them up on screen. There's Boba in a cloud of something, cloud of orange, cloud of gas, sand.
It's a sandstorm.
Yeah, and then there's Fennec in that same orange stuff. The posters are cool. I'm kind of in awe of the fact that through all of this, we still only know about 2 characters, really.
Yeah.
Like, it's like that. There's 5 characters that you could like point at in the trailers that keep reappearing, and only 2 of them are named. Right? There's Boba, there's Fennec, there's the Twi'lek, there's the Ithorian, and there's the Bosk, whatever I'm blanking. Trandoshans, yeah. That there's those 3. That there's those 3 sort of unnamed characters. I'm shocked that this is the case. Like, are there no other recurring characters on this show?
I think it's just, again, like the case of them not wanting to reveal much about what's actually happening and who like the villains are and like our antagonists are and like all this stuff. Like, I think there's probably, if this was a movie instead of a series, they probably would need to show stuff like that, like how we kind of knew about Kylo Ren, and stuff like that. So I'm thinking that might be one of the reasons why is all the interesting characters just are going to be revealed further down the line, so we don't have any posters from them.
Yeah, it's weird to me. I know they have a plan. I know they have reasons for everything that they do, but it is weird to me that they're keeping so much of it so secretive. I know it's all. I know it's like they I think they're betting that the episodes will speak for themselves and that the hardcore fans will show up every Wednesday to watch the episodes, and then we'll talk about it. And whatever big reveals there are in them or big moments that there are in them, will then get blasted all over social media, and people will go, "Oh, something crazy is going on with the Boba Fett show. I better check that out. Let me pay my $7.99 a month to Disney Plus to get those episodes." Yeah, I don't know. I just think you maybe want to build up some more hype for the first episode and hype for the season as a whole, and maybe just show us little glimpses. Not a lot. Don't give it away, but just little glimpses of who else is going to show up.
It's got to be something big. Like, for them to do it like this, for them to feel like there's going to be like they don't need to market it beforehand. Like, there's got to be something like gigantic that happens, like the Emperor's clone or like something like that just makes people go crazy. Like,
yeah, because like even like Mandalorian, you could argue is a show that only really has 1 or 2 main characters in Din Djarin and Grogu. But even with that show, they showed us Carl Weathers, they showed us what's her face. They showed Giancarlo Esposito. They talked a little bit about Nick Nolte. They alluded to this more expansive universe, whereas Book of Boba is like, nah, we got 2 characters and that's it. We don't need any more. We got Boba, we got Fennec. Who needs more than 2 characters in a show? Could just be the 2 of them in Jabba's palace talking to each other the whole time, and then they'll go and fight a bunch of extras. So, I know they play things close to the vest. I know that's how TV, they do things in TV, and I know that's how they especially do things with Star Wars TV. But I don't know. I feel like you could have. I feel like even if there's a character that doesn't show up till episode 3, that's pretty cool. You could at least tell us like, Brad Pitt is playing this guy, like, right. Like something like that.
Well, I think too, like, it's the difference between film marketing and like streaming series marketing, because like we're so used to film marketing, like that's what Star Wars has been for its entire history up until now. And, yes, you had the animated shows, but obviously they were never marketed well. So they don't count towards an example of what that would be. So this is the first time we're seeing this type of marketing. Certainly the first time we're seeing streaming show like marketing as opposed to things on TV. And like for a film, you have to get the audience in at a certain time. Like it's all about those opening weekend box office numbers. That's all that people want. And then you want to have it a strong second weekend, a strong third weekend, whatever. You want to have that run extend as long as possible. But you want to have big numbers in the first weekend because a lot of people decide whether or not to watch a film in theaters based on how many people see it the first weekend. Like I know I'm that way. Like the literal reason why I saw Avengers in theaters is because of the records that it broke. Like that's the reason why. Otherwise, I mean, I didn't see Iron Man in theaters. I saw Iron Man way later, and that's the case with a lot of movies for me. But when I hear that something has a lot of hype, I'll even if it's not a franchise I'm into, I'll consider watching it. And I think that's the case with Star Wars films. So there's that. Streaming services don't have all that stuff attached to them. Like they don't release the numbers until way later. And at some point they just want to say like, oh, this is the number one stream show, but they can kind of just say that. Like no one really is keeping track.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's one of the big reasons why you're not seeing the things that you normally would see from Star Wars is because you don't have that rush to get everybody to watch it in the first day or the first weekend or whatever. They just want people to, through the process of the show, come in and sign up for the subscription, or at least retain people, keep them interested, and not have them cancel their subscription.
Yeah, I know it's a business. I know it's how these things are. But there's something so cynical about just sort of going like, we know the Star Wars fans will show up for this, so we don't have to give them anything. We don't have to give them anything. We'll just give the barest of bare minimum. With like one trailer and a handful of TV spots and some posters with with characters they already know. I just think I think there's room in all of this to just throw a little bit more to the fans, just a little bit. Not like I'm not somebody who thinks like, oh, as fans we're owed anything. We're not. We're fans. We're show up to see what's created and we love it. But I do think there's a little bit. I look at all this stuff and I think it's so. We're gonna go through these pictures, but they're so bland. It's the trailer all over again, and even the trailer was cool, but it wasn't that cool. It didn't get me really excited the way some of the Star Wars movie trailers got me excited, or the way some of the trailers for other things have got me excited. Like that that we've talked about before, but like that first Spider-Man trailer for this new movie. That was awesome. That was incredible. Like those trailers get you really hyped. And again, it's movies. I know it's movies versus streaming, but I just feel like you could do just ever so slightly more and get people to be so much more excited. If you just said, hey, guess what? Bosk is in the show. Here's a picture. Or hey, guess what? Cad Bane is in the show. Here's a picture. I feel like people would go absolutely insane for that sort of thing. And I know then you get a bunch of people saying, "Oh, but I wish we'd had seen that in the show itself." And there's a balance. There's a balance. Absolutely. You're never going to please everybody. But I feel like there could just be not even a lot more, just a little bit more. And I feel like a show like this that we're doing here, where we're going to go through all these pictures, there should be at least one that I can't wait to talk about, that I can't wait to break down.
Yeah.
There isn't. I'll be honest, we're going to go through them, and I have a feeling it's going to go pretty fast. Maybe we'll hit on something that we spot now for the first time, but I feel like there should be just one picture. I'm like, I can't believe that's going to happen, or I can't believe that they're alluding to this.
Yeah.
But everything in this is just sort of like, yep, that's another look at something that was in the trailer.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about some of this Empire magazine stuff. We got a new cover. Look at that. That's cool. There's Boba on the cover in his new armor, looking all sweet. Awesome. And we got some pictures. So we'll go through these pictures as well. We've got Boba and Fennec. Boba sitting on the throne. Fennec kind of leaning in like they're discussing something. They're probably having a meeting with somebody else, and they're going to have a little sidebar about something. I don't know what. Looking cool. Then we got Fennec, looking like a badass, like she always does. Probably outside Jabba's palace, or somewhere on Tatooine, with her rifle. You know, this could be a still from The Mandalorian. Honestly, this could be a still from the Bad Batch. like that's how Fennec looks. That's great. We've got this shot of Boba without his helmet on, talking to the Twi'lek. So it seems like she's gonna, this Twi'lek character that we keep seeing is, there was a chance that was just gonna be like a background thing, like she was just a featured extra that was gonna just be in a shot. But it looks like she's gonna have a role. So that's interesting. Boba and Fennec somewhere on Tatooine with a Gamorrean guard in the background. Again, this feels like a shot right out of the trailer. Jon Favreau on set, looking through the camera. He's got his face shield up so he can see through the lens properly. He's wearing his mask like a boss. Looking like Jon Favreau doing some good stuff. And then we got Robert Rodriguez on set, actually looking like he's rehearsing a scene, like he's getting ready to show some stunt performer how he wants him to swing that baton there. And then finally, Boba and Fennec, not in Jabba's palace. That looks to be like where the Ithorian dude hangs out. Well, looks to be there. So those are the pictures. Anything in there stand out to you? Anything that
Nope.
comes out? Yeah, that's the thing.
Just stills from the trailers.
This should be so much more exciting. There was so much more exciting with the movies.
Yeah.
Like, I remember some of those Force Awakens pictures and the Last Jedi ones, Rogue One ones, even Solo and The Rise of Skywalker, when they were getting a little stingy with the marketing. There was so much exciting stuff there. But the big stuff, the stuff that's really interesting from Empire Magazine, though, it's the quotes. The quotes from Kathleen Kennedy specifically. So she says a whole bunch of things. We'll go through them. She talks about Star Wars in 2022. This is what she says about that. She says it's pretty exciting to see what's going to be coming next year with Obi-Wan and Andor and Ahsoka. These projects are also individual and unique in their own way. They'll appeal to a wide variety of audiences within Star Wars. I have to think that she's misspoken there with Ahsoka.
That has not started filming yet.
That's not going to film until next year. I think.
Yeah.
I think that's her. She's in producer mode, so she's thinking about what she's got to do next year, and she's got to promote Obi-Wan. She got to finish and promote Obi-Wan, Andor, and Mando, and she's also got to start shooting Ahsoka and probably Acolyte as well. So I think just a little bit of. Just a little bit of stuff is going on. I think there's just something, just a little bit of a little bit of a brain fart there from Kathleen Kennedy. So but still, it shows 2022 is going to be very, very exciting for Star Wars fans. By the way, there's something going on in our live chat, and I just got to block a whole bunch of people from some. We got
what in the heck?
We got some.
I just
spammers.
saw it right. Oh my
gosh! Got some spammers in our live chat, so I got distracted because I saw that's coming up.
No, there's more. There's more.
We got to ban all these spammers. Just trying to do something.
How did they find this?
I don't know.
Just one person.
This is spectacular. This has never happened before.
Oh my gosh, yeah, this is a lot. We need some moderators now, or get some of our Patreon supporters mod privileges.
Yeah, seriously. This is wild.
It doesn't stop.
Oh, this is something else. Something else. They're all posting at the same time.
I wonder if it's a program that just you put in a link to someone's live stream and just hit go, and then it just it does it for you. It's got to be, because I don't know if a human being could type that fast. I didn't
or
think
even
so.
just press control V over and over again.
Yeah.
All right. We seem to have a moment of quiet here.
Might just have to wait for it to run out.
Oh no, here's another one. Blocked.
Oh my.
Oh, this is incredible. For all
Yeah, I don't.
everybody who's listening after the fact, I don't know. You're not missing anything per se.
Is
but
there
this
is there a way to just chill the entire chat for like 5 minutes?
I don't know. I don't know enough about
Yeah, I don't
StreamYards.
see any button that does that.
Yeah.
Well, at this point, I mean, it's pretty obvious that it's a program, which means that it could just go on forever. So we might just have to let it keep going.
Leave it be. So our apologies to our live audience. We're gonna have to look into this for future episodes and try and come up with some way of combating this, because this is pretty brutal. But as we're just gonna power on. So again, apologies to the live listeners. Hopefully we'll still be able to see your comments in here as well and try and feature them on the screen.
Just spam your comments too.
Yeah. Just start spamming something like really exciting.
Yeah.
Something like really, really exciting about like Book of Boba or something. All right, let's talk about you know what? I'm going to say this. I don't think it's a surprise. It's a shock that this started happening when we started talking about Kathleen Kennedy. I think some of her haters are up to their usual BS.
Might be.
All right, this is what she had to say. Kathleen Kennedy, super cool person. This is what she had to say. Kathleen Kennedy, she finally addressed the rumors around Josh Trank and James Mangold's Star Wars involvement. Not even rumors, I guess, with Trank, because he was hired and then fired. So she has talked about Trank a little bit in the past, but not much. This is what she said about previous development on Boba Fett projects. She said, quote, there was virtually no previous development. We never really got very far with Josh, quite frankly, because we never developed anything specific with him. And Jim Mangold never worked on a Boba Fett story. I gotta say, that the Josh Trank quote there, like that's as close to a Kathleen Kennedy burn as you're ever gonna get in public. The fact that she kind of she says quite frankly, we never developed anything specific with him. Like, for Kathleen Kennedy, that's a serious burn. It's interesting. I have to think there's more to it than what she's saying, obviously, because I don't think they hire him unless they at least have something of an idea of what they're going to do. I don't think they hire a director unless they have something of an idea of what they want to happen. As for the Mangold stuff, I don't know. I don't know what to make of this. He's working on Indy, and I think those rumors about him directing a Star Wars movie very easily could have come from the fact that he could have very easily come from the fact that he's working on something for Lucasfilm, and so somebody just sort of went something got miscommunicated when they were talking, when all the different reporters and sources were talking about things. But it's interesting. It would be very fascinating to go back in time and see what they were thinking about with Josh Trank. They got as far as developing like a little teaser for Celebration, right? Like it was going to be like, you remember the Rogue One teaser at Celebration Anaheim? It was all digital. It was just a little teaser for that movie, and they had something apparently that was going to be for the Boba Fett movie, and they were going to show that, and then they sort of decided they wanted to reconsider whether they were going to work with Josh Trank. So I don't know. It's interesting. The saga to get to Book of Boba, very interesting.
Yeah,
very very interesting stuff. But yeah, Kathleen Kennedy kind of burning Josh Mangold with. Josh Trank, because she's like, quite frankly, it's the quite frankly that's doing the heavy lifting for me in the burning. Like, I think, if she just said we never really got very far with Josh, never developed anything specific, that's that's one thing. But it's the quite frankly is sort of like what she really wants to say is we couldn't develop anything with him. It just wasn't working.
Yeah.
What about Rangers of the New Republic? This is something people are wondering a lot about. Might we learn anything about Rangers of the New Republic, seeing as Kathleen Kennedy, seeing as they seem to have shelved it, and Kathleen Kennedy kind of confirms that they've shelved it. She says, "quote We'd never written any scripts or anything on that. Some of that will figure into future episodes, I'm sure, of the next iteration of Mandalorian."
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you make of this? What do you make of this quote about Rangers?
That doesn't surprise me, because like if this show was going to be what's her face's show, which I'm glad that this podcast isn't in Spanish because the word for face is her name, so that wouldn't help. I was thinking about that when you said that. So anyway, then like, yeah, it makes sense to just kind of like, if it was all about her and her character, then it makes sense. Why would you just make if you're going to make another show, if you're going to rewrite the whole thing to have a different character be the lead, maybe just pick another thing from the list that you have of ideas for shows that you already had, instead of just like trying to replace that specific idea with something close to it. So it makes a lot of sense if this was going to be something that was kind of a tie-in to The Mandalorian and just kind of be like extra episodes of The Mandalorian about other characters that we see. It makes sense to just show those characters more in The Mandalorian at that point, if you have a main storyline that is gone and a main character that is gone. So maybe what was left of the show wasn't enough to carry its own show. So it just goes back into the ideas for episodes of The Mandalorian. Like, I get it. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. They were setting up something really interesting with the Cara Dune character. And I really, really wish they'd recast the role so that they could pick up on the Cara Dune specific stuff, with her being from Alderaan and the repercussions of that and everything. But the new Republic side of the story still needs to be present in the Mandoverse going forward. That was clearly something they wanted to do. That was going to be part of it. There's a reason they introduced that in season 2, that they brought in, Paul Sun-Hyung Lee's character, that they brought in, that they made Cara Dune a marshal of the New Republic, that we kept seeing X-Wings sort of pop up here and there in the season. There was a reason for it. They were building to something within the story. They just never got to do it because they had to fire their lead actress. Like there's no two ways about it. So the fact that they were planning that side of the story, whatever end game they're building towards, some kind of showdown with Thrawn, that's still going to be part of it, I have to think. And now they just have to find some other way of incorporating it, finding some other way of doing that side of the story, of doing that part of the story. And I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know what they're going to do. But I hope it is. I hope that they find a way to do it that is satisfying, and I hope that they can still create a show about this at some point in the future, just with other characters. And I hope maybe what she means that it'll factor into future seasons of The Mandalorian, or the next iteration of The Mandalorian, might be that a character gets introduced in season 3 who can then be spun off. Or maybe a character that we already know gets brought back, who can then be spun off. Maybe that's, Carson Teva. Maybe that's Cobb Vanth. Maybe that's some other New Republic person that Din Djarin's going to meet in season 3, and that can pick up that side of the story in a big way. So I'm hopeful of that. I'm excited for that, and I hope that gets picked up on. So We will pick up on what else is Kathleen Kennedy had to say in a minute, but there's somebody else we got to bring on. You know him. You love him. It's Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
Yes.
Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
Star Wars rules. This is momentous. This is exciting. Why, hello there, Ben.
Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
He is the founder of the Star Wars Underworld, Mr. Ben Hart.
How's it going, everybody?
Back with us.
Yeah.
Founder of the Star Wars Underworld, Ben Hart, the Star Wars
guys.
guy.
Sorry I'm late.
Ben, I just got to say, I'm really glad to see you.
I'm really glad to see you guys. I'm really, really glad to be here. Probably more so than normal. I'm always really glad to be here. But yeah. It's good to be here. Good to see you guys. What's going to be going on with you guys? Because I've been bored. Nothing's been happening here.
Nothing's going on. Well, we had a very dramatic spamming in our live chat that you just missed.
Spamming? Who was spamming?
We'll talk about it off the air.
I'm sorry, I missed this.
Yeah. It was something, and I want to do some investigating after the show.
Well, it wasn't me, okay? It wasn't me. I can attest. It was not me.
It wasn't you. It wasn't. I don't think this was a loving prank. Let me put it that way. But yeah,
interesting.
Ben, what are your thoughts on Rangers of the New Republic? What do you think? We were just talking about what Kathleen Kennedy said about it. What do you think? What's the way forward for Rangers and for that side, for the New Republic side of the story in the Mandoverse?
Yeah, it is interesting given her comments that and kind of what we expected, at least what I expected, and be like, okay, they had an idea, they had a certain person in mind to do a show, to be a star of the show, and that's not going to work out anymore for obvious reasons. And they're going to retool this, and so it makes sense, and I'm glad they're not just going to throw this idea away. It makes sense that they're going to reconfigure this, even though it was announced. They're still going to keep it in the pipeline and do something else with it. I'm glad about that. I do hope they still keep the idea of Rangers as an idea, because if it was going to be a Cara Dune specific show, you could still, there's plenty of other characters that could fit into that role. And I think just like if they were setting up Cara Dune to be that character, to be the star of that show, they were obviously doing some setup for that. As you were saying, bringing that back and going, okay, we're going to set up a new character, do some more development, and then we're going to set them up for a new thing. I think that's a great idea. And I hope that's what they do. I really hope we get more from that show. Get Carson Teva, get all these guys. That's a wellspring of great ideas, I think, of, delving into the Republic, the New Republic, all these kind of stuff. Just the name, the Rangers of the New Republic. Can we just talk about the name? It's great. How can you throw a name like that away? It's such a good name.
Of course, in this age where shows are just named after characters, the one show with a good name gets chucked, gets canceled.
Of course.
Of course. Yeah. So, so the story will continue one way or another. It's just a matter of seeing what they come up with for season 3 of Mandalorian, or maybe, honestly, maybe we'll get a little hint at it in Book of Boba. Maybe the New Republic will factor into that story in some way. In fact, they probably should.
If they want to start, if they were laying groundwork and that groundwork is not optional now, it's not optimal ground to use, I would think they would immediately start wanting to make new groundwork. And Book of Boba Fett came about since that thing happened. So, you could easily see, we're already hearing, we're basically, I am going in expecting to see a Din Djarin cameo. I'm expecting to see some Mandalorian stuff. So makes sense. You're going to see this. I feel like this is going to be kind of the next chapter of this story we're seeing. So naturally, you get some groundwork for the future shows.
Yeah, I would think so. Book of Boba was written before everything happened with what's her face. I love that that's just what we call her now.
That those auto subtitles in Spanish are not helping.
She who shall not be named.
It was written before all that went down. So, I think what we might the best case scenario is that there's some other New Republic character that gets introduced in this who can then write into Mando season 3 and then spin off into their own show. That could be a way of doing it. But I like you, I'm expecting a Din Djarin cameo, but I'm not expecting anything to be laying the groundwork for future versions of Rangers of the New Republic or some other similar show until we get to season 3 this time next year. All right, let's move off of Book of Boba for a second and talk about some other Star Wars things, some other things. We're still in the Empire magazine article, though. This is more stuff from Kathleen Kennedy. This is what she says about the possibility of bringing back the sequel trilogy characters for future Star Wars stories. She says, quote, "Those are not characters we're going to forget. They will live on, and those are conversations that are going on with the creative team as well." Interesting.
That's very interesting.
Like, obviously they wouldn't be doing their jobs if they weren't considering all aspects of the story. But so far, so much of their energy seems to be pointed in other places. It's pointed in the immediate sort of post Jedi time frame with the Mandoverse. It's pointed at between episodes 3 and 4 with Andor and Bad Batch and things like that. And it's seeming to be maybe pointing in the High Republic area with the publishing and the Acolyte and maybe something more. Who knows? Things like that. That seems to be the focus. But the sequel trilogy is kind of just sort of sitting off to the side on its own as like in its own little island. And I hope that there is more to that. I'll tell you, I really started to want more from that and really felt the urge for more earlier this week when I finally got to ride Rise of the Resistance at Disneyland at Galaxy's Edge. In that they brought back the lead cast. You see new footage of Daisy Ridley as Rey. You see new stuff with Oscar Isaac as Poe Dameron. You see new stuff with John Boyega as Finn, Donald Gleason as Hux, and you at least hear Adam Driver as Kylo Ren. You don't see him, but you hear him. And as I was in the space where the Rey hologram talks to you, I found myself like getting a little bit emotional. Wow. I'm like, I miss these characters. I miss this character in particular. And BB-8 was there too. I miss these characters. I want more stories with them. And I hope that means they will, I hope that this quote means that they will be coming back soon. Preferably in live action form, but I'll also take cartoons or whatever else they want to make with them. Because I didn't, I knew I missed those characters, but I really felt it for the first time when I got to see new, quote unquote, stuff with them.
This is the thing that has boggled my mind the most about the last, I guess, 6 years or whatever it's been since The Force Awakens. Is like this concept of how, Resistance was really the only thing major in the sequel era that we got, and then that wasn't really about those characters from the films either. Like, I just imagined that the sequels would be a massive foundation for other spin-off films and other series and all this stuff. And it's just kind of, it's still surprising to me that, it seems almost like this Mandoverse thing is kind of the kind of central hub of what's going on, and how that doesn't extend into the future. Like, it's extending into the past. Like, you've got this, characters from that showing up in the Bad Batch, and you would think there's probably going to be some tie-ins with Andor and Kenobi, and Ahsoka seems to span things. And so there's all these connections happening kind of between the dark times and the era right after Return of the Jedi. But it's weird that you're not then also having things going on in the sequels that kind of tie back into that. Like, that's kind of strange to me. And it's also strange to me that if their plan is to kind of naturally move the chronology of Star Wars forward from the Mandoverse into the sequel era, well, that's going to take like 10, 15, 20 years. And by then, all those actors, John and Daisy and Adam, they're all going to be, much older. It would be difficult to kind of reprise their roles, from the era. And then you're kind of stuck with almost a fourth trilogy type situation where they're coming in as like the mentors, and then you just don't get that stuff. Like, how great would it have been for them to have, made TV shows in the 1990s, because then you could have still had Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill in that era, and right after Return of the Jedi, and they could have done that. And now they're just fortunately catching the tail end of the prequels, because they have that Dark Times era where there's so many years where Ewan McGregor can be much older and it's fine. And so, it's just really weird to me. I don't get it. And I'm just waiting for them to make that announcement. Like, here's your Finn show. Like, here's your other movie that Daisy Ridley, that Ray's in. Like, I'm just every year that doesn't happen, I just get more and more surprised that it hasn't happened yet. Like, come on.
Yeah. I wish that I Rogue Squadron, if that ever happens, which I still hope it does, but Star Wars. It's a Star Wars movie. It doesn't happen till it happens. I was hoping that could do some of that, and that maybe they could bring back one or two of those guys in like a supporting role in that, and who knows. But I think that was the plan coming into Force Awakens, or coming out of Force Awakens, was to do more with them, and that they would sign them on. Maybe not right away. Maybe they'd give them a little bit of a break, but they'd be doing more stuff with those characters in that time frame. And I think the existence of Galaxy's Edge speaks to that, and the fact that Galaxy's Edge is one of the few things that is set within the sequel era speaks to that. But I think the response to The Last Jedi spooked them, because you had such a visceral response to it, where half the people really, really loved it and half the people really, really hated it. And or maybe it's more like a quarter of the people really hated it, a quarter of the people really loved it, and half the people in the middle are like, it's a Star Wars movie, I had fun with it. Or I was not my favorite one, but you
always make people angry when you start like dividing up, like you hated it and you liked it. It gets real complicated.
There's a lot more nuance to it than that. But the point that I'm making is, I think that was the plan, and then they got spooked by that response.
Absolutely.
Especially with the older fans who were really a core demographic that they were courting. And I think what they wanted, the dream scenario, would be that the older fans would love the new movies, and that they would bring on and that the newer fans would love the new movies, and everybody would hold hands and sing Kumbaya. But instead, what you got a situation where a lot of older fans, not all, but a lot of them, really didn't like that movie. And those are the ones that Lucasfilm has been courting for the longest time. And so they followed them. They made the active choice to follow those fans, and not to follow the new fans that were brought on board with Force Awakens and who loved The Last Jedi, or at least thought there were some interesting ideas in there. And so they chose that. And you look at what followed that up with Solo. I mean, Solo was going to happen no matter what. But you look at Rise of Skywalker. That is a movie that is not necessarily apologizing for The Last Jedi, but it is trying to make all the decisions that go against what was in The Last Jedi, because they thought that's what people wanted. That'll make people love it. And you look at what happened with that movie. It was a success, but it wasn't the roaring success that they were hoping for. It made less money than The Last Jedi. So, they got spooked by that. And again, you look at all of the marketing for that movie. It's bonkers to me. The fact that they opened the celebration panel with Anthony Daniels and Billy D. Williams, and not Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver. Like that, like, God love Billy D. and Anthony Daniels. I love those guys. Those guys are incredible. And they absolutely should have been on that panel. But you're not going to see The Rise of Skywalker to see C-3PO and Lando Calrissian. You're going to see Rey and Kylo Ren.
Speak for yourself.
Kylo Ren and Finn and all of that stuff. You're going for that. And then you look at the opening of Galaxy's Edge. It was George, it was Mark, it was Billy D, it was Harrison. All of whom should be there, yes. But they should have been joined by Daisy and John and Alden and Felicity Jones and all of those people. It should have been this big celebration of everything that Star Wars is, not just the original trilogy.
Daisy, John, Adam, they're all in the Galaxy's Edge. They're actors in it, but they weren't there for the opening. They got Harrison Ford and Billy Williams, who are not in it. Actually, they're in Star Tours, maybe, but
but the point is, like, you know, they chose to move away from the new exciting directions and to go back to stuff that's more nostalgia based, and now they're sort of dealing with the ramifications of those decisions, which is the fact that you have you now have you know, this little section of the timeline that's all off on its own, that's all on a little island while everything else is being done elsewhere. And the success of the Mandoverse is a testament to new fans, to people who are being introduced to Star Wars through the Mandalorian and the Mandoverse and through Baby Yoda and through those sorts of things. Like, the Mandalorian is a success, make no mistake, because of Baby Yoda and the story there around Baby Yoda. I'm not just saying because Baby Yoda's cute, but like the story around it. That's the success. It's not a success because they say Beskar over and over again, right? You could forget Beskar was a thing from the expanded universe and call it blah blah blah, and all the Mandalorian armor, and if Mando could be going around going like, I have a katana of blah 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 blah. Yeah, my armor is made of blah blah blah, and the show would be just as successful because people aren't watching for the blah blah blah. They're watching for the story of the Mandalorian and his adopted son, Baby Yoda, and so, you know, those choices that they made in the aftermath of Rise of Skywalker, or not Last Jedi, set them back. It set them back, and as a result, they now had to, you know, deal with. They now have to sort of look at what they have with the sequel trilogy and find some new angle for it instead of continuing what they were doing in the first place, which is what they wanted to do, which was building a whole new era that could be really exciting, that was centered around those three movies. And now those three movies are just off on their own, and to get that new era started, you need something else. But what is big enough to feel like it belongs around with those three movies? I don't know.
It's like there's 2 points in history you have to wonder, in Star Wars history specifically, you have to wonder, like, what would have happened if, and like, one is like, what would have happened if the Phantom Menace had not been so controversial? Like, how would George have reacted? How would Star Wars be different now? And now we have the what if Last Jedi had not been so controversial? How would we? I think we'd be looking at a completely different Star Wars franchise in both cases, especially with The Last Jedi.
And now, to be fair with that one, and Joel makes a good point in the chat that, you know, JJ made a lot of those decisions with the story of Rise of Skywalker, and maybe the bigger question is what would have happened if Colin Trevorrow could have gotten his act together and figured out what was missing with Duel of the Fates. But I think all of the marketing around the Rise of Skywalker speaks to a desire for them to go, no, it's what you loved before.
Outwardly, each film is very reactionary to what came before. Force Awakens is real sets, practical effects. We heard you don't like the CGI, so we're going to do it all practical effects, even though there's a lot of CGI. You know, and then everyone complains the Force Awakens it's too safe. It's not bold enough. Oh, well, guess what? Last Jedi, it's unexpected. It's all about this. And then Rise of Skywalker is, you know, it's a great ending. It's all this stuff. They're always trying to play, but inwardly, I think Joel has a great point that, like, it was just like hot potato. Like, JJ had it, Ryan took it, and then Ryan gave it back to JJ, and then naturally JJ's like, well, I'm going to pick up on some of the stuff that Ryan ignored, and it was just kind of a perfect storm of events. Yes, I think there are some things in Rise of Skywalker that are reactionary to Last Jedi. Some people think like, oh, him catching the lightsaber. I don't think there's a lot of things that I think people look too far into, but there are, you know, it goes both ways. There, again, nuance, guys.
nuance. That's the key. That's the key. So hopefully hopefully these conversations that Kathleen Kennedy is having with the team, maybe we'll bring back that breakfast that she had with Daisy Ridley. Maybe when we made her relax, there should have been something there. I don't know. We'll go back to that. But we'll have to see what's going on there. But hopefully there's more stories to be told in that era.
Maybe it's it's food related. Maybe it's like a Star Wars version of Diners, Drive-ins, and Dives with Rey is she's got spiky hair and she goes around the galaxy checking out different places. Her first episode would obviously be at Dexter's Diner, a revamped version.
Yeah, of course.
That'd be amazing.
Kathleen Kennedy, she also talked about some stuff with Kenobi and what it was like to have Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor be reunited on the set of that series. She said, quote, "The thing that was most exciting was being on the set and watching the two of them get excited. They hadn't seen each other in a long time. I was surprised at just how incredibly emotional it was for each of them to find themselves back in these roles and realizing just how important Star Wars was to each of them. It was the beginning of their careers."
Wow.
I hope the behind the scenes cameras were rolling. I hope we get to see that moment.
Give us the footage. Release that footage.
Yeah, in Disney Gallery Obi-Wan Kenobi. I hope we get to see that. I want to see the two of them training with lightsabers again. I'm real nostalgic for that. I remember watching those behind the scenes featurettes about Revenge of the Sith constantly. There was the one on the 2004 DVD set that showed them training for that duel. I watched that thing I swear, hundreds of times. And so if there's one piece of behind the scenes I want from Kenobi, it's the two of them training again.
And I mean, the Revenge of the Sith, making of documentary is specifically just around that duel.
Yeah,
which is
within a minute.
Has been one of my criticisms of that documentary. It's I want to see how they made the rest of the movie, but they just focused in on that duel and that whole sequence, which is huge. And it's amazing what they did and impressive. But, we got so much amazing footage. I want that again.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's see. Dave Filoni, he was also interviewed by Empire Magazine, and they asked him about another show that he's working on, and that is the Ahsoka series. This is what he said about writing the show. "It's thrilling, I got to tell you. It's something you imagined doing for a long time, and then it's the kind of startling when you're sitting there and now you actually have to do it." He says, "I thought about this adventure for Ahsoka for a long time, and it's interesting to see how it's evolved. Years ago, I never would have imagined that it was sprung from a branch of a tree that had anything to do with a guy like Din Djarin or a child that looks like Yoda. It's a great lesson for me on how, when you have other creatives like Jon Favreau, they can lend such a dimension and depth to what you're doing."
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. This is kind of Ahsoka's Dave Filoni's character.
Yeah.
Very much. This is his character. So it makes sense that, he's been in the back of his head thinking for a very long time, all right, if I had a show just about her, this is what it would be. Or maybe he was envisioning it as a movie, perhaps, as well.
I mean, I think he was envisioning it as the sequel to Rebels.
Yeah, or that.
I think the Ahsoka show. I think the way Rebels ends, I think, was setting up another animated series. And the opportunity just emerged, as he says here, it came out of something else, something unexpected, to do it not as a animated series, but to do it live action. But I think, but as you were saying, this is clearly something he's been thinking about for a long time. This is something that he wants to do, and the specifics of how the story gets rolling are probably very, very different than he first imagined. But ultimately, it may be, the train may be leaving a different station, but it's going to get on the same tracks that it was always headed for.
I'm very curious to know what his grand plan is, because, I think we all love Dave, but I think we've all gonna what are you doing, Dave? When, especially in the Rebels days, when it was oh, Ahsoka's dead. Ahsoka lives. Oh, Ahsoka lives. All this stuff that he was really trolling us, in that era of storytelling, and to see it come this far and seeing after Mandalorian and knowing okay, where is this going? Rebels was going in a very specific, general direction. Where does that go? And, considering the casting announcements we've got recently and and all this stuff. It's really shaping up to be like, okay, I didn't expect this. I didn't expect it to be going this direction, but I'm here for it.
Yeah, that is my one thing about the Ahsoka show. No death fake outs.
Yeah, I hope not.
No
Oh my
death fake
gosh.
outs.
Here's my rule for death fake outs, okay? A character can have, unless they're Loki, okay? They can have one death fake out, and then they can either never die or they have to die permanently. That's it. That's the rules, okay? That's my official, completely unreliable rules of storytelling that I think should be followed.
Yeah. I mean, we've had Ahsoka death fake outs before, as you were talking about, Ben, and then Rise of Skywalker just went all in on the death fake outs.
Technically, she dies on Mortis, technically speaking.
True. So we've had 2 with Ahsoka. I hope that this series or whatever happens with Ahsoka ends in some way that, I don't think she can just die. No. But I don't think she can just go on living either. I think there needs to be kind of a button put on her story, a bow sort of tied on it to end it. So I fully expect to see the world between worlds again. I expect that'll factor in somehow. I suspect Mortis might factor into it somehow. I think this show will dive into some of those really trippy, forcey concepts that Dave has been developing with and without George over the years. And, I suspect we'll leave Ahsoka somewhere that she where she can she can be reached if you need to. The heroes of the future can seek her out for wisdom and guidance, and she could even call out to someone like Rey in a moment of need. But ultimately, she's not leaving there. There's no more story that is specifically about her.
Yeah. And, I mean, Joel had brought up in our chat about comparing her to Gandalf, and that Lord of the Rings is something Dave Filoni loves. And
she's basically dressed as Gandalf.
Yeah,
in the Rebels
epilogue. She is Star Wars version of Gandalf. Yeah. There's no denying it. She's as close as you can get.
Yeah. So let's keep talking about Ahsoka, the Ahsoka series, because Ben, you alluded to this a couple of minutes ago. We got some interesting rumors, some interesting casting news. These aren't even really rumors. These are those rumors that are basically true. They both come from Deadline, and we'll start with the one that would have been the top story last week had we done a full show and not a little mini-sode. And that is, it looks like Ahsoka, the series, has found its Sabine. So again, this comes from Deadline, and they are reporting that Natasha Liu Bordizzo has been cast as Ahsoka in a lead role. Reps for Lucasfilm and Bordizzo did not return emails seeking comment, which I'm shocked to hear that. So Natasha's best known for her role in The Society. I looked through her IMDb. Nothing really stood out to me as something that I'd heard of, although apparently she is very talented at martial arts, which is pretty
interesting.
A pretty good skill to have if you're playing a Mandalorian, especially like one like Sabine. What do you guys think? What's your reaction to this news? It's not an announcement, but it is news.
I think they definitely, for one, chose her because of her appearance, because I look at the bone structure of her face and I'm like, wow, that's really similar to Sabine. So I can see that they were kind of going for that similarity there. Beyond that, I don't know if I've seen anything with her in it. So, but visually,
literally never heard of this person, but yeah, she looks the part. I mean, you can't really deny that. I've had mixed feelings about this casting. Obviously, we've talked about the fact that Tia Sircar's right there. I don't know why. Look, I'm trying to keep an open mind. I was not a fan of Rosario Dawson being cast, and I wanted Ashley Eckstein, and then that happened, and I'm like, okay, I really like this. So I can't. I at this point I can't doubt Filoni or the casting team for doing what they're doing and saying so. I'm on board. I'll see what you got. She definitely looks the part. I'm definitely interested to see what they're going to do with Sabine. I would assume she's going to play a pretty big part in this show. given if this actually is the Rebel sequel we've been talking about all this time, and it is going to be this show that's going to be directly following that up, I would imagine, it's going to be Sabine and Ahsoka, a lot of it, which is going to be really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem like it's shaping up to be the Rebels sequel. I mean, we've got a rumored casting for Ezra. Now we've got a rumored casting for Sabine. We've got a confirmed casting for Ahsoka. It feels like it's picking up on what was alluded to in that Rebels epilogue, and we've got rumored casting for Thrawn as well. It's supposed to be the same guy. It's supposed to be Lars Mikkelsen. So it feels like that's the direction we're going in, and I'm excited. I kind of, I've said this about the Ahsoka episode. I appreciate the performance that's in that episode, and they do a lot of good things to make it feel like Ahsoka. But the thing that makes it most feel like Ahsoka is the one thing they can't do, and that's the voice.
Yeah.
And I listen to those lines, and I think, how would that sound with Ashley? And I Sabine is less, I haven't lived with Sabine in my brain for as long as I've lived with Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And same with Ezra. So it might be less of a challenge for those two. Although, for whatever reason, I feel more of an attachment to Sabine's voice and to Tia Sircar's performance than I do Taylor Gray. Like I for whatever reason, I worry a little bit about this having the same issue that I had with Ahsoka with Sabine with the new casting, but I haven't had that thought at all about Ezra. I'm just like, yeah, Mina's gonna be great.
I mean, that's just because Ezra is Space Aladdin and Mina is Aladdin, so we already know it's gonna work.
Seems like the stars are aligning with that one more so.
Yeah. So I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic, but I also, this is a show I'm very, very excited for, but there's a part of me, it's the only show that there's a part of me where I'm wishing, couldn't that have been animation? Couldn't that have been, because that's how I think of those characters. That's how I know those characters. That's how, when I think of performances as those characters, I think of those voices. And that's going to be missing. And as a general rule, I prefer live action. I would rather have live action Star Wars than animation, but this is the one place, because Rebels and Clone Wars, I hold them pretty dear, especially Clone Wars.
I hope, and perhaps in the story we can get a very, just watching it, understand why this is live action, and not just the general of, well, wouldn't it be cool if this was live action instead of animated? Like, we generally in our heads put live action top tier, even though there's been so many amazing stories in animation that, as much as I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to see it live action? I'm like, no, it looked great in animation. Animation is not a lesser medium. It's another medium.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to have the thought of like, oh, it needs to be upgraded. I don't think Dave Filoni thinks that way. Someone who is basically grown up and worked his way up through that medium. I don't think he looks down on animation either. So I'm very curious to see, like, what is the justification? Why does this need to be live action instead of animation? Is it because we could do it? Or is it because there is this is something that absolutely needed not to be animation?
Yeah. Jesse Bennett throws up this comment in our live chat. Maybe we'll get a cameo by Ashley Eckstein in a side role in an episode. I really hope so. I hope we get those for Ashley, for Tia, for Taylor, like anybody whose character is being recast. I hope that there's like they at least get offered something akin to what Matt Lanter did in season 1 of The Mandalorian. Remember, he's in that episode. There's Anakin Skywalker. He's in the episode. In season, I think it's episode 6. He's that rebel, is that New Republic officer guy. But Natasha, she's not the only new bit of casting for the Ahsoka series. Also this week, also from Deadline, they're reporting that Ivana Sakno has been cast in a role in the Ahsoka series. It's an unnamed role. The role remains shrouded in mystery. Ivana is best known for Pacific Rim, apparently. She's a Ukrainian actress. She's done a bunch of work in Ukraine. She's done some stuff in Hollywood. The speculation around her, when you look at a picture of her, is that she might be playing a Chiss. She's got a very Chiss look to her. In her facial structure.
There's a specific Chiss that people are pointing out. I think it's Arlani or something.
Yeah,
from
the
be. The article says specifically this is a new character, but is this a new character to live action, or is it a completely new character that's been created for the show? Who knows? But that she, like, if you look at the two pictures, you look at Arlani, you're like, oh wow, yeah, she could nail that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and she's a European actress, so she's probably gonna she's probably gonna speak with an accent. So and Thrawn has that kind of Danish accent because of Lars Mikkelsen. So maybe there's something going on there. She's got that look. I could see it. I could also see her playing something completely different. I could see her as a bounty hunter, see her as a New Republic agent. Like, I see where people are coming from with the Chiss thing, but she could be. It doesn't have to be that at all.
She's playing an Isilamir.
She's playing a lizard. It's a mocap role. Nobody knows. Nobody knows this.
Yep.
But the Ahsoka cast starting to fill out. Obviously Rosario Dawson in the lead, and then we can throw in Natasha Liu Bordizzo as Sabine, Mina Masood as Ezra, Lars Mikkelsen as Thrawn, Hayden Christensen as Anakin. Don't want to forget about him. And now Ivana Sakno in a to be disclosed role. And
stacked.
Yeah, probably some more characters. Probably we'll hear about maybe a few more pieces of casting in the not too distant future. All right, what do we got here? Ludwig Göransson. Let's talk a little Mando music. He's been nominated for a Grammy for his work on chapters 13 to 16 of The Mandalorian. I mean, this is one of those ultimate no duh stories. Like, of course he was. Of course he was.
It would be news. It would be big news if he wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. So big congrats to Ludwig. We'll keep our fingers crossed when the Grammys are unveiled, when the winners are announced soon. I guess the Grammys are one that I don't keep up with.
They're usually around the Super Bowl, which I know you also don't keep up with.
Well, I have a better sense of when that is. So that's at some point. That's in February. So
yeah, I think, or I'm confusing it with the Oscars.
The Oscars are around that time too, but I don't know. It'll be.
It's called award season, so
true.
No, not Graham Marley, Grammys. Yeah, January 31st. So
January 31st. Okay. All right. Well, yeah. Congrats, Ludwig, and we'll keep our fingers crossed. All right. Next up, we've got. We're gonna talk a little Galactic Star Cruiser. This new video was released previewing the Galactic Star Cruiser, the hotel experience that's opening next year at Disney World, where you can pay thousands of dollars to stay in a Star Wars hotel and live out your Star Wars dreams for 2 nights. This new video was released featuring one of the Imagineers who worked on Galactic Star Cruiser and a cast member from the Goldbergs, and it is an experience. So we are going to watch. And we're actually going to leave everybody's image up on screen so you can see us react to this thing. I've seen it. I've reacted to it once already on a podcast. It's an experience. Enjoy.
Hey, Aunt Morrow.
Hello there.
I'm super excited to see what you and your team created.
We cannot wait to have you aboard because Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser is a first-of-its-kind vacation experience where you get to spend 2 days and 2 nights living out your very own Star Wars story.
Oh, I'm just too excited. We gotta go inside.
Welcome to the Halcyon Star Cruiser.
Wow. This is unreal. It's like I'm walking straight into a Star Wars movie.
Except it's not a movie, right? You get to be in the middle of it all and in the middle of the action.
And then there's activities you can do on here.
Yeah, there are activities on board the ship. The first one that I'm really excited about is lightsaber training.
Oh my gosh.
Here on the bridge, we also invite all of our guests to do bridge operations training. And occasionally, this is where we can go to hyperspace.
Punch it!
So we've really focused on making sure we have some of the best entertainment in the galaxy on board. One of which I'm so excited about is this pop star who's known throughout the galaxy.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Me at Galaxy's Edge.
What's going on? I just popped through that door and I have no idea.
Look above and see the world slowly emerge before your eyes. Feel the swell as the moon begins to rise above the tide. All around, change is coming, something new is in the air. Come and fly to the edge of the horizon. Welcome to the new world. Welcome to the new world.
There you are.
Oh my gosh, I was just in there, the lights were low, and this performer just came out of nowhere.
You just met Raya.
This guy, she was incredible.
Let's get you back to the launch pod in your home planet.
Sounds great.
All right.
You're going to Disney jail. Getting off the path.
Wait, and they're not. They put that out, and they're not releasing the holiday special.
Seriously,
I'm so confused.
Give me a break.
Yeah, that was surreal. I like
was not expecting
a word
that.
for it, I guess.
that guy. Like, I can't tell. Is that guy supposed to be in character from his role on the Goldbergs? Like, is that
Kinda
what's
seems
supposed
like
to be
it.
going on there?
Does he actually? He's not like that in real life, is he?
Oh my
gosh.
God, my God, you guys! Oh, wow!
This is like Owen Wilson on Helium.
Like, they definitely didn't come to him like, oh yeah, be yourself on this. Like, no.
I love at the end, she's like, let's get you back to your home planet. It's like, well, yeah, that's excellent wording, because sure as hell ain't Earth where that guy is from. Like,
Oh my gosh.
and the song, and like he wanders away from the tour and just like walks into this doorway of light, and then there's the singer, and I mean the song is not bad. Like, you know, I could groove to the song, but man, it was yeah, that was.
I'll be honest, I watched that video earlier, like yesterday, and I got to the singing part. I'm like, nope, I'm out of here.
Yeah, seriously, it's
So are they trying to say that like the Galactic Star Cruiser is going to be like a cabaret experience?
yeah, it's like, what are you selling here? Like, are you selling the Star Wars of it? Like, I would have thought you bring in somebody and you get them to do the lightsaber thing, and like the part where they're on the bridge and he pulls the lever to go to hyperspace. Like, yeah. Let's go. This is cool.
Sense.
Yeah.
But then they're like, and now you're in the cabaret club.
No, that guy would have broken the lightsaber. All right, they couldn't trust him with that.
It's just so bizarre, so bizarre.
Doesn't really vibe with all the things we've heard.
Yeah,
very confusing.
Yeah, interesting choice all around there. I
mean, I'm down for it, because I'd love to be inside the holiday special. Like, that would be great.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, I mean, they should have led with that. They should have been like, hey, it's the holiday special, but it's a hotel.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm on board with this.
Yeah. So there you go. That's what you can spend $5,000 or whatever on for 2 nights, starting in March of next year. There it is. Nice. And finally, one final story for tonight. Let's talk a little bit about the old sequel trilogy, because Dennis Lawson was interviewed by the Fantha Tracks Making Tracks podcast, and they asked him about his little role in The Rise of Skywalker, and he said this, quote, J.J. Abrams got in touch with me directly, which is very unusual. They don't do that. They wanted me to do 5 days on the movie, but I was in a play and then directing a play, so I was just out of it. And he said, I don't think we can make. And he said, I don't think we can make this work. And I said, come on, we can do this. So instead of 5 days, I just managed 1. But it was lovely to be back on set. It was nice to step back on. It really was. So he could have been in the movie a little bit more. I think probably what JG wanted was for him to be there for all of the Resistance crowd scenes. He probably might have had 1 or 2 more lines in there, and he would have been standing around the table with everybody. And Poe would have said somehow Palpatine returned, and you would have cut to Dennis Lawson. He would have been like, oh, and so you didn't. They didn't have time for that. It couldn't work with his schedule, so they got him on set, put him in an X-wing thing, and said, go jump in the Falcon gun over there, and we'll get a couple of lines, and we'll pick the best one.
It's a shame. It's really a shame. We instead of Beaumont Kin, we could have gotten Wedge Antilles going dark science, cloning, secrets only the Sith knew.
Oh no.
That was definitely written for him. That's why it came off so weird. It wasn't the right actor saying it.
Yeah, that's what's wrong with
That's
that.
the problem. Yeah, he figured it out.
Yes, good old Dennis Lawson would have brought some gravitas.
Yes,
would have gone with all of that. So
but
there it is.
Look, I'm very excited to know that they wanted more Wedge, and that not only that he was excited to do it, that he wanted to do it, because someone else pointed, I think it was Star Wars News, that went back to his original interview from oh, they asked me to be the Force Awakens, and I said it would bore me, so I told them no. And I'm like, wow, now he's changed his tune. So I'm fingers crossed for maybe a cameo in Rogue Squadron, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know. That requires Rogue Squadron to happen.
Okay, that's true. Fair point.
I mean, they just are delaying it to fit with Dennis Lawson's schedule.
Of course, yeah. He's directing another play, and it's all it's all contingent. I mean, that would fit with their MO of the original, of only doing things that make sense from an original trilogy perspective. So we'll go with that.
Yep.
There it is. But there it is. There's the news for this week. We covered a lot of stuff. That was a lot of fun, a lot of good stuff in there, and of course we're now what are we at? Less than 4 weeks away from the Book of Boba Fett.
Wow,
yeah,
it's just around the corner. So, should be good. We'll probably have a couple more TV spots in the next couple of weeks, but I'm not betting on any more.
They'll drop one tomorrow morning just to spite us.
Yeah. Of course. But I think with that we can begin to wrap things up for this week.
All right, that's all we have for tonight. We'll be back same time, same place next week with another episode of the show. You can catch us now live on YouTube every week at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, every Thursday night, which you can find over at the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel. And if you are watching right now on YouTube, make sure that you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. And of course, you can find us throughout the week on social media at the SWU everywhere. Dominic, thank you so much for hosting tonight.
It was my pleasure, as always. Great fun going over all of this stuff that we did, going through the Book of Boba Fett trailers and everything, and just seeing what's on the docket for Star Wars, because there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of exciting things that I think we're all really looking forward to. But before we end the show, I wanted to share one more story from my trip to Galaxy's Edge, because it was a lot of fun and I had a really good time. And I wanted to save this one for the end, because this is for the hardcore fans. This is for the people that know the Star Wars Underworld show very, very well, because they will remember a couple of weeks ago, actually a couple of months ago, I think at this point, when Chris told a story about how he accidentally, on purpose, broke into the Rise of Skywalker, Rise of the Resistance ride, and then was lost in the line area for weeks, for minutes on end, trying to escape or get on the ride, either or. So I knew about this. I heard the story. The Rise of the Resistance ride closes 4 hours before the park closes. It closes at 8. The park closes at midnight. So I went over after 8. It was probably 9, 10 o'clock. I wanted to see what was going on over there and to see if I could get in there and pretend like I was lost and just get a chance to like wander around through the Rise of the Resistance line area. And what I found was this: a barricade with a sign that says in big letters, "Keep out."
Oh my gosh.
That is all because of me. I take full credit. I take full
blame
credit for this.
You.
Yes.
I blame
It's
you
all your fault
for this. I absolutely blame you for this. This is what we get for featuring on the show. So there it is.
I'm just picturing Bob Chapek watching that podcast going like, someone's getting fired. Someone better put up a stupid barricade.
Bob's going, somebody put up a sign. We need a sign. That'll fix it. So there it is. That's the impact that Star Wars Underworld will always have on Disneyland on Galaxy's Edge. There it is. There it is. So that's it. It's been a fun show. Can't wait to do all this again in 7 days' time.
Of course, you can follow Dominic on social media at DominicJ25. And Ben, thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad that you were able to make part of the show.
Oh yes, this was I'm sorry I'm late. I apologize for my sound and my appearance and my lovely background here. Yeah, it's all kinds of goodness, but very glad to be here and lots of stuff to talk about. I didn't get to talk about everything, but yeah, I'm going to listen to the first part of the show. I didn't catch any of it, but it's been a week, guys, but I'm gonna see you guys next week, definitely, and looking forward to it.
Of course, you can, especially this week, follow Ben on social media at Ben Hart with no E. There's a lot of stuff over there.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Lots of stuff. Spicy content.
That's right. Awesome. Let's see a few other plugs before we end the show. Patreon.com/theswu. We're very close to making a really complex announcement that we're excited for about that. But until then, get a little sneak peek of all the new stuff over there. Patreon.com/theswu. You can subscribe over there for as little as $1 a month to get our exclusive content. And then got a lot of other great stuff over there as well. So make sure you check that out. Make sure you check out all the other shows on the Culture Slate Network. We've got Star Wars Culture, we've got The Rollout, we've got Chatter Squadron. The best place to get links to all of those is to go over to the Culture Slate YouTube channel and look at all of the other featured channels on there. We're there and they're all there as well. So make sure you check that out. So that's it for this week. Thank you everybody so much for listening and watching. We'll be back next week. Until then, for Ben and Dominic and all the other great folks we have here at the Star Wars Underworld, my name is Chris, and may the Force be with you.
It's a wrap.